Hi everyone, Donkey Storm here, and today I'm excited to bring you my spec preview on the Subtlety Rogue. A lot has changed regarding rogues since I did my assassination and outlaw videos way back in early July. Let me tell you, we're in for a treat when it comes to Subtlety. With Shadowlands now less than 2 months away, it's time to start thinking about what you want to play, and it's becoming time where we can start taking numbers from the beta at least a little bit more seriously, although there will be changes without a doubt. In this video, we'll look at ability changes, talent changes, covenants, and how the spec plays as a whole. So let's get into it, and please remember to hit that thumbs up button if you like what you see here today, and subscribe to see more Shadowlands content in the future. Subtlety. Although I rated as Rogue for Legion and BFA, I hadn't touched the spec since Tumasar Garrus and the Death from Above version of Subtlety. So for the lifespan of BFA especially, the spec seemed like it was all but forgotten, hanging out with Feral Druid and Shadow Priest, Survival Hunter, and Blizzard's Doghouse. But that's about to change in Shadowlands if you haven't been keeping track. Subtlety is absolutely crushing the beta, and a lot of improvements have been made to the playability of the spec. And while going into a new expansion on top of the beta damage charts does make you an easy target for the nerf cannon, even a moderate nerf would still leave sub at the top of the heap as far as rogue specs go. And while I don't think your class and spec choice should come solely based on what's putting out the best numbers, if you're at all considering rogue, you at least want to be aware that sub is doing really well right now. So this is a chart of average DPS from Cathal Nithria, the first Shadowlands raid, according to logs, and credit goes to wowmeta.com for the information. Now, we know for sure that things will change before Shadowlands go live, but as you can see, Sub-Rogue is absolutely destroying right now. So let's find out why. All classes are getting a bunch of abilities made baseline across their 3 specs. These have been called Unpruned Abilities, and the idea behind them is that the 3 specialties of the same class should all feel like you're playing, well, the same class. For sub-rogues, what this really means is you're getting poisons, ambush, rupture, and slice and dice added to your kit. And of those, the most impactful are definitely poisons, instant, crippling, and wound, which you'll always want to be using, and slice and dice, which is going to be a maintenance buff you'll want to have as much uptime on as possible. I'm honestly unsure at this time if Rupture is going to have a place in the sub-rotation or not. Nightblade is gone, so maybe it could take its place. But these Unpruned abilities are not going to have nearly as big an effect on sub-rogues as the talent and ability changes do, so let's take a look at those. Let's start with addition by subtraction. Nightblade is gone. It was a damage over time spell that increased the damage you did to a target, basically meaning you needed 100% uptime on it, but we don't need to worry about that anymore. I'm really happy about this change, as it always felt like Nightblade just didn't last long enough and it was a pain to maintain. Instead, we'll be maintaining the slice and dice buff on ourselves and maybe Rupture if it turns out to be worth it. Playing around with rotation a bit, it definitely does feel like there is room to keep Rupture up on a target. Another big one is that Find Weakness has been removed as a talent and added as a baseline sub-ability. Find Weaknesses is a debuff put on a target that bypasses 30% of its armor, basically allowing you to do more damage to it for 18 seconds. This gets applied when you attack from stealth or shadow dance, as well as crits from backstab, so you should be able to keep pretty good uptime on it. It's nice to have this out of the talent tree, as it was a pretty mandatory talent to take anyway. Another shiny new toy for sub is the addition of an AoE finisher called Shadow Vault. Unfortunately, I can't show it here on the PTR, but this move has you leap up in the air, throwing shurikens at 8 targets around you. 8's a pretty high target cap for melee and Shadowlands. A lot of abilities are capped at 5, so it's really nice for sub to have an AoE finisher that it's lacked since Death from Above was the flavor of the month. And while this ability does seem to have some of the spirit of Death from Above, it does not look nearly as cool, but it doesn't vault you up as far in the air either. And for anyone who died from DFA's weird leaping mechanic, you probably won't mind that. Again, I'd call this a positive change. Another new ability is called Shivved. It's on a 25-second cooldown, and in addition to dealing damage, it applies a strengthened version of your non-lethal poison. So for crippling poison, an increased slow, and for numbing poison, an enrage dispel, which is a nice little bit of added utility here, a place where rogues already excel, especially in 5-man dungeons. Now this does kind of act as Toxic Blade as well for assassination, but that doesn't really apply much to us here. It also clearly is going to have some more applications in a PvP setting. Shadow Dance, the ability which the Subtlety rotation revolves around, has undergone some changes as well. It's back to 1 charge on an 8-second duration. The Deepening Shadows passive can reduce the 1-minute cooldown on Shadow Dance by 1 second per combo point spent as well, and adding the Enveloping Shadows talent to this adds an additional 1 second for each combo point, making Shadow Dance come back awfully fast. On the other hand, taking the Dark Shadow, so many shadows, talent, instead of Enveloping Shadows, increases your damage during Shadow Dance by an additional 30%, creating 2 pretty distinct playstyles. The Dark Shadow playstyle will have fewer but stronger Shadow Dances, about 1 every 30 seconds, lining up nicely with Symbols of Death, while the Enveloping Shadows style has more frequent but weaker dances, every 15 to 20 seconds, and it doesn't always line up with symbols. So here's what Shadow Dance looks like with Dark Shadows. So I'm going to open on the dummy, I'm going to put on Rupture, I'm going to put on Slice and Dice, and then I'm going to activate Symbols and Shadow Dance at the same time, like so. Go through my Shadow Strikes and Eviscerates, and then once Shadow Dance goes on cooldown, you'll see that Shadow Dance and Symbols of Death line up pretty well. It's not exact. I think in this case, I guess I had a lot of combo points to spend, and Shadow Dance comes off cooldown slightly before Symbols by just a few seconds here, so I do wait until Symbols comes up and then pop them both at the same time again. I felt like playing this way felt very natural. I liked how the two lined up for the big hits, so Dark Shadow definitely feels like a good talent. Okay, so then this is testing out Enveloping Shadows, which also adds another charge of Shadow Dance. And so I found that playing it this way, man, you're in Shadow Dance a lot. I mean, there's hardly any downtime between the two. And in Symbols, I mean, very rarely is going to line up with Shadow Dance, but this felt good too. It's definitely a lot faster play style. I mean, I'm in Shadow Dance just, almost always. So I'm not sure exactly. Without damage meters, it's hard to say, but this is definitely the faster paced, a little bit weaker hitting style of the two, where your buffs are not always going to line up really well, but just being in Shadow Dance this often might just make up for that. So obviously the Dark Shadow versus Enveloping Shadows choice is going to be really impactful on the way the spec is played. Or you can go Alacrity, lol. But some other sub-talents have changed too. With Find Weaknesses gone, it's replaced with a new talent on the first row, Premeditation, which gives you 10 seconds of Slice and Dice when you use Shadow Strike. Nice help to keep the maintenance buff going and prevent you from needing to spend many combo points to maintain it. So let's talk about some Rogue Covenant abilities. These are abilities you gain from a particular covenant that you choose to align yourself with, so you only have access to one of these at a time. First of all, we've got the Kyrian ability, Echoing Reprimand. This one is a bit complicated to understand. Basically what it does is it empowers one of your combo points, either the second, third, or fourth, and using a finisher at that amount of combo points will do damage as if you used 7 combo points. There will be quite a bit of added degree of difficulty in the rotation making that work. It's made more complicated by the fact that all rogue specs have some ability that can possibly grant multiple combo points if they crit, like Mutilate, or in the case of Sub, the Shadow Technique's passive that can generate extra combo points. So all that's going to make it that much harder to hit that magic number of combo points needed to trigger the ability. So yes, it's going to hit hard, but it might be frustrating getting it to work sometimes. The Necrolord ability, Serrated Bone Spike, puts an unlimited duration bleed on the target, and it has 3 stacks. If the target dies or is healed the full, you get the charge back. So the multiple charges of the dot will come in handy in AoE situations, or just be dumped on the same target in single target situations for the small bit of direct damage that they do. This one could be fun in a dungeon situation, spreading a dot around that you never have to worry about falling off until the target's dead, but the playstyle seems to fit Assassination a lot better than it does Subtlety. The Vithir Covenant gives you Slaughter. When you use Slaughter, you gain Slaughter Poison, which has a damage over time and instant damaging effect similar to Deadly Poison, and it lasts for 5 minutes. Slaughter Poison also steals 15% of the healing your target is receiving too, which might have some very interesting implications in PvP or fights where bosses heal. This is a really interesting one. It seems like it could be used really easily within the sub rotation, relatively smoothly too. Finally, we have the Nightblade ability Sepsis. Another damage over time Covenant ability, but this one lasts for 10 seconds and does a large chunk of damage if the target lives through the entirety of the dot, which also causes you to vanish at the end. Some really interesting implications there, thinking about the big time damage rogues can do out of stealth, and with this being on a 1.5 minute cooldown. Unfortunately, it can only be used on targets under 35% health, so this kind of sounds to me like a single target raid boss Covenant ability, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. All in all, Subtlety Rogue felt really good to play. It's amazing what removing a bummer of an ability like Nightblade can do for a spec. The pace was good, every button I pressed felt impactful, the addition of Slice and Dice made things feel more fast-paced, and the burden of maintaining the buff was not bad at all. I know I mentioned earlier in the video that Sub is putting out big numbers in the beta, and I actually expect it to get nerfed at some point. However, as long as Sub doesn't get absolutely nerfed into the ground, I think it's actually going to be a competitive and enjoyable spec for the first time in quite a while in Shadowlands. But please don't choose your spec based on beta damage numbers. Try it for yourself and make sure it's something you're going to enjoy. That's going to do it for Subtlety, guys. If you liked the video, please thumbs up and subscribe. And until next time, this has been Donkey Storm.